So this video is a clip from my conversation with Sam. We discuss the tactical evolution of fullbacks, looking at how different sides use their fullbacks. The other clips will be linked in the description below, as well as a link to buying Sam's book. So if you are interested in the concepts and topics we talk about in these videos, definitely go over and check out his book.
So now we'll go into some kind of specific examples from the book without, again, trying to give it all away, if you like.
Yeah.
So again, we'll keep it on the theme of fullbacks, but here's just a little overview if anyone is interested of kind of topics and ideas. So it covers everything in and out of possession. Obviously, there's a lot on COVID and schedules and stuff because last year was a very, very unique season, wasn't it? Especially with no fans and everyone in lockdown. And all 20 clubs will have a little bit of kind of assessment on them, but then there's a lot that have quite a lot of detail around them and some things that I found interesting. So like I said earlier about West Ham and their attacking transitions, their counter-attacks that they're still showing now, they are very, very good at, along with their set pieces. They're having another good season. And it's good to see that a lot of the stuff that I mentioned in the book is still happening this year and still relevant, which is good for certainly from my perspective. So we'll look at Leeds and how they use their fullbacks. We've already spoke about with AC Milan the four dropping in, so Calvin Phillips dropping in to make that three. They tend to obviously attack with a 4-3-3 or like this 3-3-1-3 that Bielsa uses, especially when they're playing against a front two. So a team like Burnley, for example, Southampton, you've said with a 4-4-2 earlier. So any team with a front two, they'll tend to flip to a three, and it'll be Phillips bouncing to the side, or it'll be Phillips dropping right in between to widen the centre backs, like we saw Kessie do earlier. But I think I like the first one better because in the middle of the pitch, then defending, you've got your five as opposed to the one on the right where you've got your four defending the middle. And Calvin Phillips is good out of possession, but I think structurally the one on the left's a bit stronger. And again, you've got Ayling, you've got Dallas, you've got Firpo, isn't it, this year, pushing forward from left back a lot. Alioski used to be, again, a great way of pushing those fullbacks forward. But I like with Leeds is that they keep the wingers wide as well. So all these wide combinations they do between the 2, the 7, the 3 and the 11, and then people like Click and Rodrigo and those 10s and 8s moving across sideways to support them. The wide progress is great for Leeds. And then the other way we'll do it is, again, similar to what we said about Walker. Ayling's another example of a fullback that's kind of been that third centre-back on the right. And again, I like this one as well. If you are going to go from a 4 to a 3, then instead of the 4 dropping in, you've got 3 out of the back 4 there still in place, really. Defensive transition-wise, it's good. But this one, especially this year with Firpo a lot more attacking than Ayling, you've got Firpo on the left going forward as opposed to, like I said, Ayling going forward. So I don't think Firpo will probably be useful as a third centre back, if you like, in a 3. Certainly compared to Ayling. And just a bit on them playing out. So after the centre backs and the centre backs split and the full backs bounce out, this width and these wide area combinations are really, really, really intriguing. That especially when the winger kind of presses out to block the centre, a lot of the time the winger will drop in, and if the opposing left back doesn't follow, then the winger's got a free turn. So more often than not, they do follow. And Bamford's movement across to pin the closest centre back is really key here to stop that little slide and screen across. And then some of these combos where it might be just a little 1-2, and the timing of that is really good. Where Leeds fullbacks have got this thing where they hold the ball just long enough, they lure the winger in, and then just before they slow down, they release it for the little bounce. They're really good at that. You've got the third man one into the 8 and bounce it into the 7 behind. And then you've got the dead simple clip over. It could be the clip to the 9. These wider combinations, there's so many different variants. In the book, I try and touch on kind of strengths and weaknesses of a lot of them. But there's just so many that you could almost write a whole book on Bielsa's wide playing on itself without touching anything else.
Yeah, Leeds is so hard to follow. Like when you watch a game, it seems they've got so many different movements.
Yeah, they're so well coordinated as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
So kind of thinking the other way and flipping it now. So again, looking at Man City. So they, in the book, I looked at a lot of their high pressing and again how they use the fullbacks. So to deal with similar combinations that Leeds do, I suppose they kind of start like this, where the 9 might drop in, and this is a bit of a Liverpool press as well, actually, where the 9 comes in and screens. So you make a bit of a 4-3-3. and you kind of lock the ball one way, and the 9 will keep screening across as that 4. Then you move across in here to kind of locking it this side, and the 10 moving across there crucially stops. You go half and half to stop access into the 7 and can still press the 8, the 4 coming across, and then Man City's 11 and wingers getting ready to jump across just as the back 4 kind of squeezes in. So they tend to press that from out to win, and they cut that pass from the 5 to the 2. So it's very difficult then if the 5 wants to go to the 8 to bounce it to the 2. Man City have got loads of numbers centrally to jump on it, and then the other winger will obviously come in and lock it in. So naturally, this is kind of your out ball hitting that opposite side, that diagonal ball. But the problem is it's obviously going to be in the air and the receiving kind of back to touchline. So if the fullback's low, it tends to be Man City's midfield then jump across. You see Bernardo Silva unbelievable at pressing. He reads the game so well. Foden's kind of similar as well. It's interesting to see how Grealish will keep settling in at City, because I've always felt kind of Mahrez not lets it down, but isn't always on the same wavelength as some of the press. And it'll be interesting to see how Grealish keeps kind of working on that pressing as well. So some teams will naturally then go out, then if this is the space, we'll roll the winger in, and like we said, we'll push the fullback on. So then you pass the midfield line, so then City simply just kind of slide and cover across, where the fullback then jumps out to be the fullback. And that's what we spoke about Walker and Azpilicueta, players that can kind of do both, where if they needed to jump out, they can do, or if they needed to cover around, they can do. It's invaluable qualities. And then the 4, kind of Rodri, who's great at, again, reading and screening, dropping in to make sure there's overloads around the opposition's front line. So there's just a bit of an example of kind of one of many of City's presses. And again, I kind of break it down. If they're playing against a back 4 or back 3, if they're playing against a single pivot or a double pivot, they'll do subtle changes. And there's so many different variants, again, of pressing that City are great at. And obviously once, as it showed there, they're great at locking the ball one way. So if they don't win it back straight away, they stop the opposition from playing. And then kind of the last one that we'll look at from the book is a bit on Mourinho and his time when he was at Spurs. So when he was at Man United, I thought he came up with initially an interesting way of dealing with high fullbacks and wingers rolling in. So when some teams attack with a front 5, there's both, so like a Liverpool where the both wingers come in and the fullbacks go. And that front line of 5, Mourinho obviously likes the overload in the back line, and what he did with United on a few occasions was the really narrow back 4. So there's your overload against the front 3, and it was the responsibility for both wingers to track the fullbacks, and you make your back 6. The kind of issue here, counter-attacking wise, is then you leave your double pivot to support your 9 and your 10, which kind of personnel dependent isn't probably the most effective way to go about it, as he showed when he was with Spurs. Again, personnel dependent. He had Højbjerg and Sissoko, who are defensively quite good as individuals and particularly can deal with the aerial balls as well and support any second balls around the centre halves. So they were the ones that dropped in. And the thing I like about this is then it keeps the fullbacks wide to defend the wide areas, because that's where fullbacks generally, if they're a fullback, they probably defend best in the wide areas. So you look at players like Matt Doherty kind of strikes me as one, as does Sergio Aurier, as does Marcos Alonso. They tend to be defenders that are good in a back 5, but not great in a back 4. So having that extra cover inside of you, again, is really good. But then the strength of this one as well is to make that next line of 3 in front, you're basically using your wingers and your 10 instead of getting your wingers to be where the 3 and 2 were. So counter-attacking wise, you're a lot stronger. And with Kane dropping in and being so effective at that link up, him and Son last year were unbelievable, weren't they, at linking as a pairing. And out of frustration, a lot of times the other team's centre mids would kind of like bounce out and find space just to get away from the traffic. So then them inside channels open up ideally for the 11 and 7. And you've got Moura, who's great at carrying the ball. You've got Ndombele as a 10, who's great at carrying the ball. You've got Son, who's similar. And Son obviously can run in behind as well. And then you've got Kane dropping in. So I think, although, a lot of people didn't think he did a great job with Spurs, I think he was kind of onto something in some examples, especially like low block defending when they beat Man City using a low block. They were really good on that day. But then ironically, for whatever reason, they decided not to use the same strategy when they went to the Etihad
Mm.
in the return game. I think they got popped like 3 or 4 nil, I think, in the return
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Um, and some of his low block ideas on paper to me strike me as really good and really interesting. It's just interesting to see how Jose's not kind of
Mm.
hitting the heights that he used to anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so without kind of revealing any more secrets, that's like kind of the insight into the book and stuff. And as I say, yeah, it is now available. The stock's kind of finally been released. It was supposed to be released in the summer, kind of June, July time, but
Mm.
lots of supply issues and with the way the world with COVID and Brexit and all sorts going on, been delayed a little bit. But again, if anyone, yeah, you're interested in tactics, strategies, loads of different teams, loads of different coaches, how they work. The great thing about football is you can always analyse it. And there's always games to play, and there's always
Yeah, yeah.
coaches and people to watch. So it kind of never ends. But it's if you're interested in that, this is hopefully the one for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially the fullbacks, because they seem to have over the last decade or so had the most sort of evolution, like the inverted fullbacks, the like because it used to be like the natural overlapping ones, and then
Mm.
Guardiola sort of changed it, and then now you're getting like the fullback who drops in as one of the three back. So it'd be interesting to see what happens over like the next 5 years because I can see that the role that like Walker plays, the like drop in and play as one of the three. Like I
Mm.
can see that player becoming more of like a midfielder who's like a better passer because they seem to have the most space on the pitch when the opposition's set up. So if you can continuously get it to someone, because if you look at Zidane, he would get Tony Cruz to drop in there and
Yeah,
Modric on the other side. So that seems like a
yeah,
good idea because you want your best player on the ball at the time. Whereas if you
yeah.
have a centre back there, the opposition are probably fine with them on the ball. So it'd be interesting to see how they adapt it over the next few years.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it will be. Like you said earlier, you think, well, actually, it's kind of reached its peak, and what's going to happen next? Then somebody will think of something somewhere,
Mm.
won't they?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think you like what you're saying about the fullback tend to having a lot of space. A lot of teams, like kind of season on season, are becoming better at getting compact.
Yeah, yeah.
You look at even teams like Liverpool, their like gaps they leave between the lines are so tight, and the way they shift across with the ball is
Mm.
unbelievable. And West Ham were the same at the weekend; like they were unbelievable, especially in that first half. They
Mm.
were unbelievably
Yeah,
compact, and Liverpool are like firing passes through. They're trying to get numbers in. They're trying to get Salah and Mane coming in. Trying to get Jota to drop. Trying to get Chamberlain or uh, who was the other ones who played Chamberlain? Was it Milner?
um, was it
Chamberlain, Fabinho, and Henderson, wasn't it? Henderson.
Henderson? Yeah, yeah.
Trying to trying to get in between them lines, and it's so difficult. So then the space is going to be around,
Mm.
like I said, and then the fullbacks have more time. And if your fullbacks aren't, it's like any position, I guess nowadays. If you're not technically good enough,
Yeah,
you'll get found out. You can't just be a centre back anymore. You've got to be like Van Dijk, where you can hit
yeah.
70-yard diags onto a sixpence without breaking a sweat. You've got to be like John Stones, who can step in. You've got to be like Harry Maguire can step in quite well. You've got to be unbelievable on the ball, and you can't just be a fullback anymore. You have to kind of offer some attacking strength, don't you? Really, whether that's crossing, whether that's like you say going inside and being the best passer, whether that's the old school overlap again if that comes back in.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, be interesting to see if kind of wingers start going back out now, back onto their. Because I've always preferred my wingers to be right foot on the right and left foot on the left. I always like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
width. I prefer that than coming in because I prefer my number nine to be my number nine and
Mm.
in the box and high and scoring the goals. I don't like the nine dropping in as such. Me being
Yeah,
picking
yeah.
personally.
Yeah. Especially if you got two forwards, then obviously the crossing makes a lot more sense. So like Man United have Ronaldo, but because they've got Greenwood on one side and sometimes like Rashford or someone who's going to come inside on the other side, they never
Mm,
really get into crossing positions at all. So it mostly comes down to like I think the most important areas are probably like, I would say now fullbacks, because that dictates a lot of what you're doing.
yeah,
Centre forward, because obviously if you've got like an Aguero, you're going to need more like play around the centre of the box. And if you've got
mm-hmm.
someone like Lukaku or Ronaldo, you can try the outside a lot more.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, and yeah, the makeup of your nine, your eights, or yeah, whoever your attacking players, how
Mm.
they need to be fed, yeah, is massively dictated by their qualities. And it's like Jamie Vardy would rarely play into his feet and get him to pin and drop
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
which is he's going to go in behind because he's unbelievable at it. So
Mm.
your fullbacks, then you've got to be able to play those channel balls in behind, or those bent ones across, or the diags, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, the fullbacks are interesting. Like you say, the next kind of 5 years, we could have another Zoom in 5 years' time, and all this will be totally wrong, and
Yeah, yeah.
there'll be loads of new stuff. Yeah.